Can you all see the slides? Okay, so we said that, right, rice growth stages, there are 3 major growth stages, right? So under that, from 0 to 3, there are 4, right? It comes under the vegetative stage, right? So we said that 0 is germination, right? Number 1, right? Denote the seedling stage, and then tillering, and then stem elongation or internode elongation, right? So that's the place where we have stopped, right? So there, when we study, right, at the end of the vegetative phase, we said that canopy size, right, and plant height, and then plant population, that is the density, so almost determined, right, at the end of this stage. Okay. So then we are going to stage 4, right? If you remember this table, right? So next phase or next stage is the reproductive one. So it has again 3 specific growth stages, starting from panicle initiation and booting, right? And then heading and flowering and pollination and fertilization. Okay. Let's look this one, right? Stage 4, that is panicle initiation and booting, right? So these 2 things, right, happens like within a short period of time. So then we combine them, right? Sometime you be reading somewhere, right? They will look into 2 different stages, but you can always look them into combined, right? As combined. So this stage 4, right, that is panicle initiation, begins with the initiation of panicle primordium, right? That's the the place where it originates, and then at the tip of the growing pillars, right? If I show you distillery, right? So that's our stage 2, right? We said that we will have primary, secondary, and tertiary tillers, right? So if they are productive, right? If the tillers are productive, then on the top of them, right, they will produce panicles, right? So that's what this first bullet point says you, right? Begins with the initiation of panicle primordium at the tip of the growing tillers, right? So the panicle develop inside the flag leaf sheath, right? So flag leaf is the last leaf, right? We'll have before it develops panicle, right? From the tillers, right? So this particular panicle, right, develops inside the flag leaf, right, and it becomes visible to your eyes around 10 days after initiation, right? If you visit to the field, right, maybe at the very early stage, you may not be able to visualize it, but usually 10 days after, you can see, right? You can see this flag leaf that holds this panicle, right? It will swell, right? So that around 2 weeks after panicle initiation, this swelling of flag leaf will be visible. So that's what we call as booting, right? Maybe I will highlight using the pen right here, right? So that's what we call as booting. Now, booting stage you can clearly visualize, right? The crop if you go to the field. And then when it has grown to the length of around 5 centimeters, right? The panicle primordia differentiate into spikelets, right? Spikelets, where it will produce flowers, right? So that's from where they develop into flowers, right? And then during the booting stage, right, meiosis takes place in the spikelet, right? So we said that spikelet will develop, that will have, developing flowers, right? So before, in order to facilitate the pollination and then subsequent fertilization, you know this meiosis, uh, you when you study in the advanced level cell division, right, we study two, right? One is mitosis and then second one is meiosis, right? But in the flowering plants, before they become ready to the reproductive phase, right? What occurs is the meiosis, right? So then, following flowering and pollination, then fertilization can occur, right? So that meiosis will occur, right, in the spikelet, right? That's the um, place where flowers are developing, right? So during the booting stage, right? So this is also very critical stage, right? Because of the very young stages of flowers are developing from there, right? So that is panicle initiation and booting, right? So then following the development of panicles and booting, right? So that is the swelling of the flag leaf, right? This developed panicle now, right? Now panicle is developing. It should be exerted, right? It should come outside, right? So that's we call as exertion, right? It should come out of that flag leaf, right? Completely, right? Then only the flowering can occur, right? So this it represents this heading, right? The heading stage. It represents the exertion of the panicle from the flag leaf sheath, right? So it usually completed 15 to 20 days, right? This stage is completed 15 to 20 days. So in this picture, right, on this slide, you can see maybe this booting picture is not that much clear, right? Since it's very difficult to visualize in a photo, right? But if you go to the field, right, you can identify booting through the swelling of the flag leaf. But in this, the next picture that shows the heading stage, right? So that is very clear, right? This from the flag leaf, right? This panicle is coming out, right? Completely, right? So that's called exertion, right? Exertion of the panicle, right? So here in this picture, you can see the developed panicles are coming out, right? Coming out. These panicles will have spikelets, right? Spikelets, they will have flowers, right? Right. So this is in a sequence, right? For you it's easy to understand, right? So if I again go back, right, you can simply remember, right? So first, you put the seed, maybe in the nursery, maybe direct seeded, right? It will germinate, and then the seedling, right, stage where it develops the fibrous roots and at least 4 or 5 leaves, right? And then once they develop those leaves, right, from the main stem or main culm, right, the tillers are developing primary tillers, secondary tillers, and tertiary tillers, right? When the tillers are developed, right, those tillers need to grow, right? So that stage is identified by this stem elongation or internode elongation, right? So that is the stage where they grow, right? These pillars, especially in height, right? And then when the tillers, right, grow, right, then the panicle start to initiate, right? Panicle initiate, and then when the panicle grows, the swelling of the flag leaf. Flag leaf is the one that covers this panicle, right? Kind of a wrap, right? kind of a red. So it will swell, right? That's we call as booting, right? Once this panicle completely developed, right, it should come out, right? It should come out. So that is the extraction of the panicle, right? Panicle from the flag leaf. That's we call as heading, right? Heading, right? So it's a sequence of events, right? In the order happens. And then, right, now this panicle is outside, right? So they will have spikelets and then flowers, right? Um, so then flowering and pollination, fertilization stage, that's the stage 6, right? Stage 6. Right. So this flowering also called as anthesis, right? It can be called as anthesis, right? It begins when the anthers, right? Here in this white color you see, right? Those are the anthers, male part, right? Protrude. They come outside from the spike, right? From the each spikelet, you see. So these white color ones, right? Those are the anthers, right? Anthers and filament, right? So, so when the anthers come out, right? That's flowering, right? Generally florets, right? Open in the morning, right? But it depends on the weather conditions. Mostly in the morning, right? Continuous. This stage continues for a week, right? It's around 7 days, right? To all the spikelets in the panicle to flower, right? So this is the panicle. So, for example, if you take, see, this is one panicle, right? There are a lot of spikelets, and then we'll have florets, right? Small flowers, tiny, tiny flowers are called as florets, right? In a combined flower, right? So rice is 95% almost self-pollinated crop, right? The stamens elongate and anthers move out, and pollen is there, right? So in this stage, right? So these are biological terms you will know. These are male parts, right? So they will elongate and anthers, right? Anthers which will have the pollens, right? So that pollen is there. And then when pollen is shed, right, pollen grains fall on the pistil and fertilize the spike. Fertilize the spikelet, then it will start producing the grain, right? Successful after successful fertilization, it will turn into grain, right? Turn into grain. So those are the events occur, right, during the stage 6, that is flowering, pollination, and fertilization, right? Is that clear to you, right? So those are the 3 stages comes under the reproductive phase or reproductive stage. Is that clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, right, now you know, right, so flowering occurred, pollination successful, right, and then fertilization occurred. Now this, each and every this floret, right, should turn into, right, a grain, right, maturing grain, right, maturing grain, right. So those are the stages we are going to look under the ripening stage. Under the ripening stage. So now we are moving to the ripening stage. So that stage 7, 8, 9, right? 7, 8, 9 are the specific stages coming under the ripening stage. Okay. So stage 7, right? Immediately after successful fertilization, right? Successful fertilization. What we will have in this spikelet, right? Is that kind of a watery structure, right? Watery, some liquid, right? Some liquid because that's very, very immature, right? Grain. Because after the fertilization in crops, right? In crops, mostly what will happen is towards these seeds or maybe towards fruits, whatever produced during the vegetative phase or maybe through current photosynthesis, right, assimilates are produced, right, as a photosynthesis. Right. After successful pollination and fertilization, the translocation of those assimilate occur, right? So at very early stage, right, this translocation, once translocated, they will develop as a liquid, right? And then later, little bit later, it will turn into a milky material, right? Milky material. So this stage, that's why we call it as milk grain, right? So at this stage, grain has begun to fill, right? These are the grains, right? Small grains you can find if the pollination is successful, fertilization is successful in each of this one, right? Each of this one. So those are the grains, right? Then this grain is going to fill up earlier with the milky material as the translocation of assimilates start, right? So in this picture you see, if if you press that that immature grain, right, you will get a white milky liquid, right? So that's why I put it here, this picture, right? So when you press in between fingers, right, you can see that milky liquid, right? So that stage is called as milk grain stage, right? Milk grain. So that's the stage 7, right? And also the very first stage of the ripening stage. Okay. And then this now this earlier it was a milky material, right? Now this gradually it's going to right get harder and harder, right? Because it needs to mature, right? Mature, right? So in between this mature grain and then milky grain, right? We'll have a stage called duff, right? Duff grain, right? So at this stage, right, milky portion of the grain turns, right, first into a soft and later as a hard duff, right? It's kind of like a powdery kind of still immature than the mature grain, but harder than this milky stage, right? So in this picture you see like kind of a white material you can see, but still it's not very hard, kind of a duff kind of thing, right? So that stage we call it as duff grain, right? Duff grain stage. So that's the stage 8 according to the notation given by the International Rice Research Institute, right? So then let me remove this as well. And then the last one, right? Last stage is stage 9. That is the mature grain stage. Mature grain stage. So in this stage, right, grain becomes hard and color changes to golden yellow, right? Golden yellow color grains. You can see, right, as you can see in this picture, right? And then mature grain stage is complete when 90 to 100% of the field spikelets have turned to yellow, right? And then you can also see, right, as crop matures, you can also visualize the senescence of upper leaves and black leaves. You can see, and then usually, when the crop is ready to harvest, right, when the grain moisture content, right, is around like 20 to 25%, right, generally. So that is the range you can decide to harvest the mature grain. But if you are using combined harvesters, right, combined harvesters, it's better you harvest a little bit early, right, at maybe around 30% moisture content. And the reason is that, if it is dry, and, when you apply combined harvesters, there's a high chance for damage, right, grain damages. So that's why it's a little bit early we have to harvest if you are using combined harvesters at 30% moisture content, around 30% moisture content, right? So those are the considerations you have to have, especially for the mature grain, right? So, okay. So with uh, that we are completing the growth stages, right? If I again go back, I don't want to go back to the vegetative, but the things we have covered, right? We have covered now, right? Two major stages, the rest of the two, right? The reproductive one and the ripening stage. So, after stem elongation, right, we said that, the canopy size and then the plant height and the density are determined, right, by the end of this stage, right? And then it start to produce panicles, right? That's we call as initiation. And then when that panicle develops, and then the flag leaf swallows, right? Uh, then we call it as a booty, right? And then the developed panicle should come out, right? So that stage we call it as heading. And then after heading, right, after these panicles come out, right, they will flower, right? Once after flowering, right, pollination occurs and then fertilization occurs, right? So with that, the reproductive stage completes, right? Completes. And then it moves to the ripening stage, right? Very immature grain. Earlier, it will have, right, a milky material, right? So that's called as milk grain stage, right? And then it's gradually matures. So that intermediate stage is called as duff grain stage, right? And then finally it becomes hard, right? And then ready to harvest. Then that stage is mature grain stage, right? In a sequence, you don't need to like memorize like by heart, but think as a sequence of events, right? In a crop, right? What happens, and then if you know those terms, then you can always write it, right? What happens. All right. So, are there any questions? Any questions? Anything you want to discuss, especially regarding these growth stages of rice? So we said that. So if you don't ask question, you will ask question. Okay. So we said that there are three main stages, right? Vegetative, reproductive, and ripening. Okay. So anyone can answer to this question, right? My question is that, right? So take any environmental stress, like maybe take heat stress, or maybe heat stress occur when the temperature increases above the optimum, right? And then, or maybe drought, right? Water scarcity. So which stage do you think will be very vulnerable to those stresses?
Vegetative stage.
Why do you think so?
The high temperature will affect the germination.
That's true. That's true. But I am asking very drastic impact. Which stage you will observe a very drastic impact? Maybe I have little bit touched when I teach the ecological requirements. That is true. That's I accept that vegetative stage also can be affected by stresses. I'm not going to argue it will not be affected, but what is the maybe whenever we say anything, right, there'll be high impact and low impact, right? So which one may be critical stage? students, you can just give a try, right? Maybe you know the answer, but you are afraid to tell, or right, you can tell, right? Uh, you may be wrong, you may be correct, that's fine, right? Yeah, that's correct answer. Yeah, some answers also I received. Yeah, they say that reproductive stage is affected. Yeah, that is true. You know, all the stages can be affected, right? Depending on the severity of the stress. But if you take these three major stages, most vulnerable stage is the reproductive stage. Because if you remember, right, when we talk about the temperature requirement, right, we said that if the temperature increases, right, beyond 35, right, there's a high chance for the sterility, right, in the spikelets and grains, right. So that's the reason, right. If you take especially the flowering stage and the pollination, flowering, pollination, fertilization, these three events occur in very short period of time, right? So if that high temperature occurs during that very short period of time, if that overlaps, right, you will lose the yield significantly because of the sterility, right? Because they will not produce any grains if the pollination is not successful, if the fertilization is not successful, then the spikelet will not turn into grain, right? So then what will happen? You will not have yield. So these high temperature events can happen within that short period of time. Even the water stress, right? So they can desiccate if the water stress is severe. They can desiccate the pollens, right? Desiccate means remove the water, right? Desiccate the pollens, and then the pollination will be affected. Fertilization will not occur, right? Then it will not turn into mature grain, right? Then your yield, grain yield, will be drastically affected. But other stages, they are not that much sensitive because these flower organs are very sensitive. But other stages they can somehow manage, right? During the vegetative stage, they develop canopy, they develop roots, right? They develop their vegetative parts. Mm, they're not that much very sensitive to those stresses. Still, they can be affected, right? But not as this reproductive stage. Is that clear to you? The reason is clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with that, we conclude the stages. We have half an hour more, so then we will start a new section, right? A new section. So the next section will be the agronomic management, because I said that we have to understand growth stages, align the management, because each and every growth stage require different kind of management, right? So that's why I told you the stages before we come to the agronomic management of rice. But I know that you have already covered nursery management, right? For rice, isn't it? Under the practicals.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So then we will leave that nursery management, but we will look where it happens, right? So again, this agronomic management for crops, any crops, right? And there are some common things available, right? You can remember, right? first you have to prepare the land, right? And then you have to take the seed, right? And then you have to treat the seeds. You have to establish crops. Like there are some orders, but for depending on the crop, sometimes there can be specific practices. But this one again, you can remember in a sequence, right? In a sequence of events, right? Sequence of events. Then you don't need to write by heart. You don't need to memorize it. Just if you know the sequence, what we have to do first, what is second, what is third, right? If you know the sequence, then you don't need to memorize, right? Okay, so for the agronomic management, right, for rice production, right. So we'll start with the land preparation, right? We'll start with the land preparation, right? So this land can be prepared, right, depending on the two different crop establishment methods, right? Depending on. So if you want to establish rice as a wet, right, under the wet system, right. So you have to follow the wetland preparation, right? So we will go into detail, right, in the next class, right? What are the differences and why we do that, right? But today I am going to give an overview for all the economic management, and then we will go into detail for each and every one, right? And then you can do either that's first one wetland preparation, or maybe you can prepare as a dry land, right? Without water, right? Dry land preparation, especially um, if you are planting, right? If you are establishing rice, right? As a rain-fed crop, right? As a rain-fed crop, right? In the water scarce areas, right? Then the farmers practice this dry land method, dry land preparation. So the Manavari, right? Manavari method, it's we call as Manavari, right? And then Ekola, right? In single lighting, so that term is Ekola method, right? Of rice establishment, right? So that is dry land preparation request for that. So if you go to especially areas like Amparal, they will have this, right, Manavari system where um, they prepare, they do dry land preparation, right? Dry land preparation, hoping that rain will come, right? Rain will come. The Kekulam also like that, right? So both of them are right dry land preparation methods. But if you are especially doing flooded rice cultivation, especially under irrigated facilities, then we'll go for wetland preparation, right? So those are the two methods available for land preparation. And then once land is prepared, right, there are other sub work also you have to do, right? You have to prepare the bunds, you have to clean them, you have to plaster them, right? And puddling is the important practice, right? That is under wetland preparation, right? So we will go into detail, right? Go into detail, but briefly, there are two, right? The land preparation you can do into two different methods, right? And then once now you have purchased the seed somewhere, right? Maybe the certified seeds, or maybe a variety you want to grow, right? So then we have to do the treatment, right? If you want to control the seed-borne pest and diseases, right? You can apply some chemicals, right? Or there are some practices we have to do to induce germination or breaking the dormancy, right? In the seeds, right? Um, so the dormancy is a period, right? The seeds will have, right, for a certain period they will not grow, but if you apply, maybe you can soak in the water, right? Then you can break that, right? You can break that. So that's kind of a natural mechanism they have because they don't want to immediately germinate, after maturing, right? So So that's kind of a natural mechanism most of the seeds have, right? But if you want to break them, right, you can lose certain things, right? So that's all come under the seed treat, right? So now your land is ready, seed is ready, right? You can establish crop, right? So that's the crop establishment, right? So you can again establish the crop into two different methods, right? You can directly seed, that's called as direct seeding, right? And then you can produce the seedlings in the nursery and then transplant them, right? So under the crop establishment, there are two methods, right? Direct seeding and transplant, right? Again, if you go to under the direct seeding, right, you can do broadcasting, right? You can broadcast throughout the field, right? Or you can use any machine or something, right? You can do raw seeding, right? You can do raw seeding. Again, transplanting, right? Transplanting also there are parachute method is there, right? You can just throw in the atmosphere and then it will fall and then um, establish the seedlings, or maybe you can plant them in a row, right? The seedlings, right? It's up to you, right? How you are going to establish, right? Establish, but there are benefits, there are advantages, there are disadvantages. They are with each and every method, right? Each and every method that you should know. So the crop establishment broadly two. One is direct seeding, transplanting. The direct seeding you can broadcast, right? Or maybe you can put the seeds in a row, right? Using a row seeder or something, right? Right. So now crop is established, right? So land is prepared, seed is there, seed you have treated the seed, and then you use the seed to establish crop. Either direct seeding or maybe transplant, right? Transplant. So those are the very first, practices you have to do, right? Until you establish the crop. Any questions so far? Are there any questions? So in the absence of questions, let me know, right? So then, we have to provide other inputs, right? Other prepared inputs to the crop, right? Water is there, right? Important input for rice, and then nutrients, and then in the country, right? So if it is if the command area, right? For example, say this is a reservoir, right? This is a reservoir where this you have this. Sorry, I will draw it again. So this is the reservoir, something like this, right? Reservoir, this area, you have the bund, right? Usually we make the bund, right? And then it will have the sluice gates, right? You may have studied in the engineering, right? Sluice gates to remove the water, right? So this, in this area, right, where it collects the area that receives water from a reservoir is called as you have to receive to your field and then release. Right? You will have the inflow and outflow, right? Otherwise, water level continue to rise, right? So you will have obviously a drainage system that will drain the excess water, and a canal that will bring the water into your field, right? So that's under the irrigated system, how you manage water management, right? And the nutrient management, right? Especially the fertilizers, the nutrients, major nutrients in peak case um, required for rice production, right? And also there are some micronutrients like zinc, maybe silicon, right? Those also recommended in some areas, depending on whether soil has that particular nutrient or not. If the soil is deficient in those micronutrients, then the Department of Agriculture recommends to incorporate them also into the recommendation, right? So, so fertilizer recommendation is decided based on the areas, right? Soil type, right? The age of the variety, right? Agroecological regions, right? Target yield, right? Several conditions, the DOA, right? That's the Department of Agriculture, right? They recommends the fertilizer amounts, fertilizer recommendation available for us. And also nowadays, there because of there are problems with this excess application of fertilizers, especially nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers, right? They think that we have to go for, we have to incorporate organic sources as well. So in that case, they think that we have to go for this integrated plant nutrient systems, right? In a way that we can integrate both inorganic and organic sources of nutrients. So that is, we will little bit touch integrated plant nutrition system, how it works in rice, right? Because that's our staple crop, right? You should know, right? And then you have to obviously protect the crops from the biotic agents, biotic stresses like weeds, right? Pests and diseases, right? So then weed management, pest management, and disease management come into play, right? So maybe you can use different methods, right? So farmers popularly using the chemicals, like if they want to control the weeds, they use herbicides or weedicides. To control different pesticides, and then to control diseases, fungicides, are there anything, right? Mostly fungal diseases controlled by the fungicides and other chemicals, right? So maybe you can use some of the methods like cultural methods, or maybe physical methods, integrated methods, etc. So objective is that, right, you protect the crop, right? Protect the crop. So how we can protect the crop is that, so it's the responsibility of who is growing, right? Maybe usually farmers, right? So they have to go to the field, right? Frequently, right? So and monitor. So monitoring is very important. So that is very important management, right? Monitoring of the field, right? Uh, so they have to do it daily, right? And go and then find out are there any symptoms, are there any weeds emerging, or maybe um, are there any symptoms for pest disease damages or nutrient shortages, right? They have to go and look, right? So that also come under the management. So in some other countries, they call this as scouting, right? The same term, right? But they use, in the schools, we have monitors, right? And also we have some similar function, but we call the scouts, right? But that's a different thing. But it's kind of that these terms are, right, comes in parallel, right? What you do in the field. you go and observe the crops, right? For any symptoms, for any weed species coming up, or maybe any sort of problem in the field, right? So that's called as monitoring um, or scouting, right? Monitoring or scouting, right? So that is very essential for the crop protection, right? Then only you have to. It's better you identify them early, right? Then you can develop the control measures to control weeds, control pests and diseases, right? And then, right, with all this management, right now your crop becomes ready for harvesting. It matures, right? Again, there are considerations when you go for harvesting, right? You can use manual method if you are, if your land extent is small, right? And then nowadays mostly farmers use this one combined harvesters. And then during the harvesting, the moisture content and other parameters uh, uh, you have to consider them, right? Whether the moisture content is appropriate, and then whether it's suitable for you to harvest the field, right? Those considerations are important when you come to the harvest, right? And then after you harvested, right, you will do some processing to clean and everything, right? And then storage and processing, right? If you want to store, right, you have to be careful about the storage conditions in a way that they don't get damaged by insects or maybe any disease causing agents or maybe rodents and all, right? And the weather conditions, like climate conditions, like whether you are going to put them in outside room or maybe a facility with temperature control and temperature and RH control, relative humidity controllers. So such considerations are important. And then how you're going to process, right? Maybe you can process as a raw rice or maybe the parboiled rice, right? So that's also have some considerations, right? So usually with the storage, we will close the talk about this agronomic management. This processing and this comes um, under the food science and food engineering stuff, right? Right. So the agronomic management stops where you do harvesting and do some storage, right? And then the processing comes under the food science or maybe food engineering, something like that. There are a lot of considerations and a lot of stuff there, in processing and then marketing. When you talk about marketing, then economics comes in like that, right? So those are the, as I said, you can look this also, right? This also again as a sequence of events, right? If you have the story clear in your mind, right, you no need to remember anything, right? Just the keywords, if you know, right, you can organize in a nice way, right? And then have it for lifelong, right? Otherwise, each and every time you have to, go for the notes and see if you're blindly remembering it, right? But if you can understand this as a sequence of events, right? For the lifelong, you will know, right? Any interview you go, or maybe anything, right? You can simply say that, right? Okay, so is that clear? Or any questions, comments, clarifications? 5 minutes more we have, right? So from anything so far we have studied, right? Any comments? Anything you want to ask about this? Any questions for the exam or something like that? Any concerns you have? Anything do you want to talk? Agronomic management, right? In the next classes, we will go into detail, right? And then where I will especially my most considerations will be on like crop establishment, right, methods, and then water management, right, some important stuff we will learn there, and then the nutrient management, right, especially the nitrogen, right, especially nitrogen, how we want to apply, right, how we can minimize the losses. Those things I will briefly explain, right, in an extent you need that, all right. And then the crop protection, I will not spend that much time because there's a specific course there, right, for weed management, and then you will study under the agriculture biology courses, right, pests, diseases, right. But I will outline them, right, major pests, major diseases, um, and then I will not put questions from them, right. And then we have to write briefly. Um, One maybe half an hour we will spend to study the physiology by which this yield is determined and their yield components. With that, we will conclude this rice section, right? So that's my plan. There was one question came into the chat. So when answering the questions, are the keywords enough? No, right? So, you will have the exam like maybe essay questions, right? Essay type, right? So um, you have to answer like a story, right? Story. So that's even though I will look for the keywords, if you miss the keywords, right, you will lose the marks. That's true. But only the bullet points will not be enough, right? You have to uh, write like a story, right? Depending on the question, type of the question. Sometime I will ask list something, right? List some factors or something. Then you can write the points, right? But when I ask like discuss the factors, controlling something and something, then you have to write like a story, right? Like paragraph, right? So that's how you write an essay question, right? You may know in the advanced level also we have essay type questions, right? And then structured essay is different. It's brief, right? But essay you have to write like paragraphs, right? So so that is expected here as well. Any other clarifications? So if you don't have questions, so we will finish for today, and then we'll meet next week. Thank you.